it's going to look a little wonky, but I'm going to try to make it full screen.
Tara the Amazing. So, all right. Our speaker today is Dean Ryerson from the Madison West Middleton Club. He's here to share his story about a recent friendship exchange to Poland. For those of you who don't know Dean, he's a retired, I believe, school administrator. And he's a past District 6250 governor. So he's one of the big shots in the district. So, and he's very active that way as well. So please welcome Dean Ryerson. So wherever you want to stand.
And where do you want me to stand?
Right about here.
Right here, and with me is Bobbie Sladky, who's a member of the Downtown Club. We were both part of a delegation of 10 people from our district
You guys can see.
in the South Central, Southwest, whatever, Wisconsin, to do a friendship exchange to Poland. What in the world is a friendship exchange? It's, I think, a thing that's not known too much by Rotarians. Have any of you been on a Rotary friendship exchange? Jackie, where'd you go?
We went to Sweden.
You went to Sweden. Oh, that's right. I remember that. Friendship exchange is an exchange to another country, another Rotary district of 10 days. It involves 10 people and it's exchange. In other words, we went to Poland and we stayed in homes in Poland. And in the spring or early summer of this coming year, we'll be welcoming 10 people from that Polish district to come to Madison and to Wisconsin. And we'll host them in our home. Some of you may be asked to host.
And if I can say something,
Yep.
we're going to be really hard pressed to show them as good a time as they showed us.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Yep. So Bobbie and I are going to talk about the purpose of the exchange, what we learned about Poland. We went, one, to learn about Poland, their culture, their people. How many of you have been to Poland? What part of Poland, John? The northern part. The northern part, okay. We were between Gdansk and Warsaw. And if we can get to the next slide, I always do that if somebody puts, okay, so our trip would take us to this part of Poland. You can see here's Warsaw, here's Ukraine. At one point, we were about 48 miles from Russia. One of the reasons we wanted to go was to see the work of Rotary supporting Ukrainian refugees who are spending now time in Ukraine. Poland is a country of 68 million people. They have currently integrated into their country over 8 million Ukrainians.
Wow.
8 million. Poland the size of about New Mexico. Our district has sent over $7,000 to help support the immigration centers in Poland. And we're going to show you some pictures of our experience talking to Ukrainians and visiting with them in the immigration centers. Now, we started our trip in Szechwan. We went to Poznan, Bydgoszcz, and then we finished in Olsztyn. We've spent a couple of nights at each places and with Rotarians from clubs in those communities. These cities are anywhere from 500,000 to about 700,000. Places we hadn't heard of before. Now let's talk a little bit about Poland. Who's famous from Poland? Who's a famous person from Poland? Anybody know? Who? Pulaski, absolutely. Who else?
Oh, we said.
The Pope. Yep, Madame Curie. The astronomer Copernicus. In Olsztyn, they were excited to show us statues of Copernicus. So we learned a lot about their culture. A country that's been tossed and torn. They said
most of their existence, that area was occupied by Germans, Prussians, and Russians.
They said to us, now remember, we didn't speak to everybody in Poland, but we talked to a lot of people. And they said to us, we may not like the Germans, but we hate the Russians. Most of the cities we were in were 75 to 90% destroyed in World War II. And they have memories. As one said, we may forgive, but we won't forget. We heard some powerful stories as we traveled from place to place. And the next slide, we traveled by train. And there we are. They were local trains.
They were
Nothing
on
fancy
time.
about them.
They were on time, they were clean, and they had bathrooms.
That's right. And I felt like I was in an Agatha Christie movie, the next slide, because we stayed in these little cabins where you thought, who's going to come and find out who murdered whom, and these kind of things. We saw many stations in small towns. On the next slide, that as we went through, we're going to move right through these. Very typical scene in the small towns in Poland.
Yeah, if you want to.
Oh, and
I
then
know
we
his
can do
rhythm.
this.
Okay.
That
You know
sounds
his rhythm.
good. And right there. And we saw people get on at various places. We found out that this time of the year, we were there in October, Polish people go to the forest, and what do? They hunt for mushrooms. So these high school kids got on, they spoke English. I said, what do you got? Mushrooms. Are you going to sell them? No, we're taking them home. We had lots of mushrooms. I mean, lots of food, but it was every kind of mushroom you can imagine
Wow.
that we had. So again, part of the culture that you get from a friendship exchange. We felt like rock stars. We get to a station and here's the welcoming committee. Something that you also can do if you go to a Rotary Friendship Exchange. There's going to be one in February to India. You can go on the Rotary District website. You can learn how to be a part of a friendship exchange team. They are amazing. And so we were welcomed by these people. And we stayed in homes. Bobbie, why was that important to stay in homes? You stayed in this
I
home.
stayed in this home. I'm a horticulturist, so it was fantastic to see all the plants and orchids that the mother of the house, who isn't in this picture, Agatha, I think is her name, was her
Yes.
name. Her good gardening skills. You learn a lot. I mean, every bathroom had a bidet.
Okay.
Very modern homes. Every kitchen had an espresso machine, which like has inspired me. I'm not quite there yet, but really modern homes, really hospitable. Fixing the food. I think we've got this is at a wine bar, but staying in a home, you just get a sense of how people are. And I did stay in this home. Agatha didn't speak very much English. And there were actually 5 of us staying in that particular home. So, I mean, that's a lot to put up 5 Rotarians in your home. It was awesome.
But the hospitality was amazing. And folks, it was about relationships, getting to know people, over a beer. A beer like that. By the way, I went thinking that food was going to be expensive. We'd heard there's this war going on in Ukraine. They're not getting all of these things. Food was incredibly cheap. A big beer like that was $2 US.
Wow.
Gas prices in Poland right now are about $5.50 a gallon is what they're paying for their gas. But the food was very inexpensive and the relationships were awesome. What's happening here, Bobbie?
Where are we?
We're having that lunch on a Sunday where we visited the cathedral.
This
and
is at a wine bar,
Right,
or a brewery,
brew pub.
a brew pub. And again, honestly, I haven't even gotten to the vodka yet. But yeah, I mean, just look at this food and we ordered from a menu. We walked around this was in Stargard,
Yeah.
walked around this beautiful small city that was walled and it was all brick. It was a beautiful country. And again, enjoyed a meal with the Rotarians. Oh,
Yeah.
and the other thing that Wisconsin would do well to learn, every one of these brew pubs and restaurants had non-alcoholic beer on tap. Because Poland has very strict drunk driving laws, and anyone who was driving chose the non-alcoholic beer, and it was really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we could do better in this country.
So what else do? We heard stories. Go back to the previous slide. I heard this woman and her spouse talk about the Ukrainians that they hosted in their home. Mostly women and children, because the Russians are not being kind to women and children in Ukraine. And so to hear those stories of how they were opening their homes, not just to us,
And just,
But
there's
Ukrainians.
strangers.
complete strangers, was amazing. Okay. And here's an example of a typical Polish breakfast. And the vodka on the table, he wanted us to have because he had labeled it COVID vaccine. We saw senses of humor like you wouldn't believe, and hospitality that was over the top by our Rotary colleagues. For those of you, Donna, you've been in Poland, typical communist era construction. The Poles didn't get their freedom until the early 1990s. So they lived with it. And it was very interesting. This is Szechwan. You can see the architecture. They were very proud of their new concert hall. This was a city of about 700,000. The Odar River flows up into the Black Sea. It's a shipbuilding community. They had 3 or 4 clubs there. Their particular club met at the Radisson Hotel. And it was a club of all men except the 2 daughters of the president were there. They had Rotary actors at the club because we went to Rotary Club meetings. We gave a PowerPoint about Wisconsin, wetting the whistle for when they come to Wisconsin, what they could expect in visiting us, as they then told us about the work of their clubs. We went to cathedrals, and this club had arranged for us to hear the organist play Bach and a number of other pieces on this grand instrument. It was amazing.
Notice the brick. This is brick Gothic architecture.
And again,
it was
most of these
everywhere.
were destroyed in
Yes.
the war and were rebuilt after the war. We saw prosperity. The unemployment rate in Poland is about 3%. And so they're welcoming the Ukrainians to help their workforce. They were telling us they're hard workers, they need workers, and they were embracing what the Ukrainians could give to them to help their economy.
But-
But we saw construction cranes in all of the cities that we visited. Things are going okay.
And someone said to me, when the war is over, we're really worried because we know those Ukrainian construction workers are going to want to go home and rebuild their country. So they were anticipating more labor shortages.
Ulstein was a city, our 4th visit, kind of like Madison. I stayed in a home near the 30,000 student university. It had 5 lakes, and they were very proud of showing us the beauty of Ulstein. We thanked them for sending us Julia Orzel, who was one of the UW women volleyball players. We found out that women's volleyball is very, very big in Poland. So we thanked them for the national championship team last year because Julia played on this team. We hope that she'll be able to be with us when we welcome our Polish friends in the spring. But Olsztyn, a very beautiful city. Here's a very typical apartment building complex where a number of us stayed when we were in Brygdosz, Polish streetscape. Again, some of the beauty of these cities as we were touring around in each of them. We went to what's similar to Old World Wisconsin, only this was Old World Poland. And they were proud of showing us their heritage, the singers and the dancers. And what in the world is this spot?
This is a home I stayed in. It was the parents of the Rotarian. He had little kids. He did have room. So one of my fellow travelers and I stayed at this home. We had mushrooms for breakfast, fried mushrooms for breakfast. And this is like a potluck meal that was set up for everybody to share in. So all of the Wisconsinites and all of their Rotarian hosts and a bunch of other Rotarians came out to this little farmette where she believed in whole foods and clean food. So we had red deer sausages, red deer hot dogs, red deer tartare, because he hunts and brings home the meat, and they have, they eat most of it.
Yep. So they fed us well. Oh my gosh.
This
did
is
we
a
eat the
restaurant.
pierogies? This is at a cafeteria at lunch one day. They picked up everything. This trip cost us the flight of the plane. And that was it. That was it. And we'll do the same for them when they come here, as we want to be hospitable to them as they were with us. So
Yeah.
food, amazing. We had some fun. We went to a croissant museum, and the head person said, "No, you got to help us make croissants." So put the apron, it was just,
They were not ordinary croissants. They were St. Martin's croissants, which had poppy seed and nuts and are
Yep.
typical of Poznan, Poland.
we went on a old fashioned trolley car tour of one of the communities they had. One of the members of our party from La Crosse actually drove the trolley car for part of the way. But, just again, to get a flavor of their culture, of course, today in Poland, it's modern trolley cars in all of the cities that we visited. We're going to move right through
Yeah,
this.
because we know you're.
And we went to a farmstead
Oh,
where
yeah.
the farmers were celebrating the fall harvest. It was apple crisp. We learned that apple pie was the big dessert of the fall in Poland. And they had ciders and Polish pastries and artwork.
And it was kind of a
guitars.
commune, kind of a hippie commune.
Yeah. And it was,
But even my very pulled together apartment dwelling host had bags of apples in her kitchen. So.
big deal.
Oh,
Again, this is a breakfast scene that we had at one of the apartments in which we stayed. This is the Rotarian, his spouse, another Rotarian.
And the ship, houseboat building.
Oh, yes, we went to Rotarians companies. They wanted to show us what they were doing. And this company was building houseboats, high-end houseboats, I might say.
That are sold all throughout Europe.
Yep. Okay, we're going to move. This is a home that I stayed in. There wasn't room for me in the home with the mom, the dad, and their 3 kids. So I stayed with grandma next door, and she didn't speak any English and I didn't speak any Polish, but we had the best coffee and pastries and conversation every morning. She was amazing. Here's the couple. They wanted to give me their homemade honey. They found out I was an educator, so I went to school with the kids one day and talked with the principal. I'm a twin, so it was fun chatting with their twin 8th grade boys and their 7-year-old daughter. Typical Polish breakfast with the breads, the sausages, the scrambled eggs. This is my home and grandma's house. My bedroom, it was amazing. This was not vodka, but I haven't had so much vodka and beer since I was in college. It was amazing. All right, we're going to move right through this.
This is another group hub.
We heard about the work of clubs. So when we visited clubs, notice the Ukrainian flag, all of them were about Ukraine and giving support to Ukraine in big ways.
How many club meetings did you go to?
Pardon?
How many club meetings did you go to?
4 or 5.
5 or 6, I
Different
think,
clubs?
and we were there, different clubs,
Wow.
right? And the president of this club was a professional singer. So she did a concert for us before that and our dinner of pierogies.
At a Pirogarnia, which is a pierogi restaurant.
They wanted us to show us the work that they do. This club does work to build communities. They do the same thing. Here's the Rotary logo. on the equipment that they had given to help furnish a hospice center, which 4 of us were able to go into. They didn't want the whole group because of COVID. This was a kitchen that a young professional club supported because they were teaching people job skills related to cooking and foods and all of that. Instead of going to a restaurant, we cooked our own food at this kitchen that night. And here's the Americans with the Polish people getting to know each other, drinking beer and vodka, and fixing this elaborate dinner.
That was really fun.
to
That
put
was
it
a really
together.
fun experience.
It was amazing.
We made tartare.
Now, this shows you the club membership seemed to get younger as we went from one city to the other. And Olstein, here's the members of the club, here's the president-elect. It was interesting seeing Rotary attracting younger professionals in Europe. We're going to move on. This was a school that the club supported because they don't have programs for students with disabilities in the public schools in Poland. So parents have to kind of find their own ways to get support for children with these kind of needs. This Rotary Club was so proud that they supported this school. They took us there, gave us a tour.
And the students fixed us lunch. Well, they had food prepared, of course. And this is out of order because this is
Yep,
the
this is
senior.
back at the hospice
seniors.
center where some of us had visited. All right, Ukraine. Even the sculpture of the tightrope walker across the river, he was dressed in Ukraine color. We saw Ukraine all over the place. They give us wristbands. They didn't want us to forget about Ukraine. And here they're talking about, again, they're helping in a crisis, the support for Ukraine. We wanted to see what our district was doing with the $7,000 that we spent. This says Rotary District 6250. This was a food bank, food, clothes that they were providing you with the Ukrainians. These were all Ukrainians. They had a translator for us. These women were crying and they were laughing. Some of them had watched their husbands getting shot. And we heard those stories.
And yet they fixed us all this food.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was absolutely amazing. Again, telling their powerful stories about why they had to leave, what they were doing, and their hopes and their dreams. Another Rotary supported project was apartments that Rotary provided for women and children who were refugees from Ukraine. This little boy was in one of those apartments with his mother and sister. We didn't see anything but beds and kitchen stuff. That
All the
again,
little
Rotary had
circle
supported.
beds. Yeah, multiple families living together.
Again, one of the programs we heard was this guy, his name was Arut. I think,
Arut
Bobby, we've got a better picture.
Caponian.
As we were talking with him, he was a frontline fighter in Ukraine.
I still get videos from him.
Yep, and he kept sending us things about why it was important that we know what's going on in Ukraine. It was
I
amazing.
think there's a lot of fear that the Americans and Europeans will forget about this war now that it's dragging on for so long.
Yeah.
So,
By the way, we asked them, are you worried? They said at the beginning of the war, they were a bit worried. But now they're more confident that they see an end in sight. They feel with the worldwide support for Ukraine and against Russia, that they're not as worried. They sleep a little more confidently right now because of the status of where things were. Again, more pictures of their work to support immigration centers in Poland.
where's the,
Now, this is one of the immigration centers that we visited. The Polish refugees are going through picking up clothes before they went to the window to get food that was supported by the Rotary clubs. I asked these 2 high school kids, why are you here? It's Saturday morning. You could be doing other things. because we want to help our neighbors. These people live in our community. That's what high school kids told me as they were packaging the food. To me, this picture says it all. Look at her expression. You know, the absurdity of such a situation. No wonder there are tears and there are laughter. They gave us a plaque thanking us for our support as Rotarians for what's going on in Ukraine. And we can donate, you can still donate to our District 6250 non-profitable or nonprofit organization that we have, the district has, to support our efforts and to support the club's efforts in Ukraine. It was powerful to hear their stories and what it was about. I think that's a zip through the 10 days that we spent there. Questions that any of you might have, and Dan will give us the hook when any questions, yes.
Going back to that book you had about the apartment that Rotary supported for the women and children,
Yes.
how does a structure like that get built in these relatively small amount of time that that work?
The structure was there and they were able to rent it. It had some empty spaces in it, so they rented the empty apartments. And it was out in the middle of nowhere.
That wasn't very convenient.
Nope, but it's what they had. Any other questions on this? Yes.
Maybe a dumb question. Ukrainian people speak.
No, but we learned that the Ukrainian language had something close to what the Polish language were. They're all Slavic languages.
So they would interact
So they were interactive, plus they had kids that they were integrating into their daycares, into their schools. And they also had adult training that the Rotary people were doing to help them learn English, a common language that they had. I stayed in the home of that young couple with the twins. He ran a body shop. It looked like one of our high-end body shops out here on the west side of Madison. And he said he can't get workers, so he hires Ukrainians. And he said they're good workers and they work hard. And they're dependable and reliable, very grateful for the gifts that they were doing and hopeful that some of them will decide to remain in Poland as things hopefully settle down. A question here.
Curious, in terms of, you said that at the Rotary meeting, there were only the daughters. I was wondering if women have a different role there in the country, or is that?
That was a very good question.
Can I
The young woman
answer?
that I stayed with her husband, the body, she was also a professional businesswoman. They both were members of the Rotary Club. Bobby, what were your responses?
The club in Chechen was still, learning about women, but these two young women that were in that club, the daughters of the president, were movers and shakers in that club. The club in Olsztyn, there's another club in that city that's male only. So they started their own club. And again, the young women were really impressive. And they're fun. They do a lot of really fun stuff. That Halloween party, every year they have a big Halloween party with a theme, and everybody wears costumes and dances, and they organize the dinner that we all work together to prepare.
And
So
gave
I
us
would
each
say,
aprons. I mean, they didn't miss a trick.
and I would say the women were the driving force in that club.
They gave us some Polsnom. We got these to celebrate Polsnom's colors. And the goats that were the symbols of the city, when they came out at the clock tower, the goats were adorned with Ukrainian colors.
Yeah,
It was everywhere.
but yeah,
It's a common question, but 20 years ago, I had an opportunity, and you can tell by your energy, I led a group study at James Street Food District, Mato Grosso, Brazil, and spent a month down there.
Yeah.
And just listening to you is bringing back a lot of great memories I had spending time with many families in 7 different cities over a month down there.
Yeah.
Curious to know the city that you were in, did you see much discussion around the NATO activity happening in the country?
You know,
And did you see much
the
activity?
discussion was more the business people talking about the relationship with the European Union. They weren't happy at all with their government right now, because they said for some reason the government is rejecting all the support that the EU wants to provide for Poland. And the business people we talked to were just really questioning what the world's going on. Plus, they didn't like their government. They felt the government was closing up to the conservative Catholic Church. And many of them are not active anymore. It's happening in a lot of Polish countries, or I'm sorry, European countries, where people just, young people, church isn't relevant anymore. The New York Times just had a story about this last week in Breddosh, where we went. And so there was a lot of resentment of why their government was closing up to that part of things. You know, it's like anything else. We listen. You know, there's a little divisiveness in this country, and I sense there was some divisiveness in Poland as well. But you know what? That's what happens when you're sitting around the dinner table and you're having a beer and you start talking about life. That's why these friendship exchanges are such a remarkable experience.
And they were happy to be in NATO because of,
Yep.
they
I
felt
was
that was
proposed
protected.
For a work study exchange from Hiroshima when I lived in York County. And I found that to be a really valuable experience as well, because it was focused more on work and sharing with different businesses. I had a florist, and so I got to take her to my florist friend's shop. Do you know if there's going to be any bringing back that concept of work-study exchange rather than just friendship exchange, which is a valuable thing too?
Yes, Rotary changed that out, and for a while they weren't doing group study exchanges. Now they're returning and allowing those. I think they realized that was probably not a good move. The people wanted to have that kind of experience, so I think we're going to be hearing more about that. But Jackie?
You know, many of our people like to travel,
Yes.
and there is nothing like traveling via the friendship exchange. We spent 10 days in Sweden and learned all kinds of things, and actually work study came part of it, because we were able to go to different businesses. We met with people that were in some of the same occupation as we were, but when you actually live in their house, and in our case, we lived for 3 to 4 days
Yep.
with 3 different families in different areas of Sweden. It was remarkable. It was a trip that we could, had we just gone to Sweden, we would never have experienced Sweden the way that we did. And we saw things like, who would think about a defense factory in Sweden? The last thing you would think of. And yet they provide, and we had a tour, we had to give our passports in 2 days in advance, because people were not allowed to go into this defense factory. We found out that they make almost all of our ammunition and our big machines, our big guns for our Coast Guard, the Coast Guard of the U.S.
Interesting.
and NATO ships. I mean, it was phenomenal, and things that you would never, ever have thought about, or even say, Sweden, they're a neutral country. Why would they do that? So, but we went in 2014 to Sweden. We have still maintained close friendships, email and call with the 3 different, and actually 4 different people that we really became close with over there.
And there's a lot, I have a connection to a Navy SEAL, my godson. And he was, you know, there's a lot of military action or training or cooperation that goes on that we never really hear about. He was in Poland, Norway, and the Mediterranean for 6 months after the Ukraine war started.
So Jackie, I'm sure your experience was like ours. Not only did we get to know new Polish friends, I have now 10 new best friends from Wisconsin.
Yeah.
They put up with me on the train and every other place. Get to know Bobby.
The Van Gelder.
And so that was a benefit of this exchange.
Yeah.
The
And it
other
was-
thing is
We
that-
not only had Dean, a past district governor, I think we had another past district governor, and we had a past district assistant governor.
Right.
And like lots of higher ups in our district that, you know, I'm kind of down here, but I got to know these people and I'm getting to know more about Rotary.
You really do. You learn about this incredible organization that we have in Rotary. Connections we can make. Let me tell you something. If you have a desire, you've got a connection in another part of the world, and you think, how about if we did a friendship exchange to that place? All you do is contact our district governor. The district governor contacts the district governor of that area of the world and sees if we can put together a friendship exchange. It's actually that easy.
Yeah, and this one happened because Irma and Edwin met at a conference and hit it off and talked, and they put
Yep.
this together.
I was seated at a table in San Diego where I was doing a district governor to be boot camp. And a guy sitting next to me was the district governor to be from the Philippines. I said, maybe we ought to do a friendship exchange. He said, sure. You know what? We had a friendship exchange with the Philippines. And I've been to friendship exchange to the Netherlands. I led a friendship exchange to India. Amazing, staying in these homes, talking about this wonderful organization that we're a part of called Rotary. You find out it's all about doing good in the world. That's why you do it. Thanks for allowing Bobby and I to be here today.
Well, Dean and Bobby, appreciate you being here today. As with all of our guests, we make a contribution to Portfolio Plus, and we will do that in your
Very
honor
nice,
as well.
thank you.
So thank you for both for being here. Appreciate it.